What if the very things you think are your weaknesses, like being too sensitive or maybe a little too quiet, what if those were actually your biggest strengths? Today, we're going to dive deep into the ISFP personality, the one they often call the artist, and really uncover that gentle power they hold.
Okay, let me ask you this. Have you ever met someone who, well, they just seem to radiate this quiet, gentle kindness?
The kind of person who really avoids arguments, they never, ever want to be the center of attention, but you can just feel that underneath it all, there's this whole universe of deep emotion going on. And maybe they have this creativity that could just light up a room. But for some reason, they almost instinctively pull back from the spotlight.
If any of that sounds familiar, maybe it's someone you know, or hey, maybe it's you, then you've probably come across an ISFP, the artist. And today, we're going to get into exactly what makes them tick.
So, what's really driving an ISFP? It's not about power or being in control, not at all. Their whole motivation is to feel the world, to really experience it. They want to absorb all its beauty, its textures, its emotions, right through their senses.
And this really gets at a deep internal struggle for a lot of ISFPs. They'll look at how sensitive they are, or how much they just hate conflict, and they'll ask themselves, am I weak? Is something wrong with me?
But that couldn't be more wrong. The truth is, that sensitivity, it's not a weakness, it's a superpower. It's almost like they have this high-definition camera for the soul. It lets them see all the subtle colors and feelings and the beauty in the world that, honestly, most of us just walk right by without even noticing. Okay, so to really get the artist, we've got to decode their personality code. Let's break down exactly what ISFP stands for, piece by piece. First up, the I is for introvert. The best way to think about this is like a social battery in a phone. Big parties, tons of small talk, that stuff drains their batteries super fast. And to recharge, they need to plug into some quiet, alone time. Next, we have S for sensing. This is all about being grounded in the here and now. So while other people might be off in the clouds thinking about abstract ideas, the ISFP is right here, experiencing the world directly. They're noticing the warmth of their coffee cup, the feeling of bark on a tree, that very specific color of a sunset. Then there's F for feeling. When it comes to making a decision, their compass isn't pure cold logic. Nope, it's their heart. They're guided by what feels right, by their personal values. They're always asking themselves things like, is this the kind thing to do? Does this create harmony? How does this impact everyone? And last but not least, P for perceiving. The big word here is freedom. ISFPs absolutely thrive on being spontaneous and keeping their options open. A really strict schedule, a bunch of rigid rules, for them, that feels like being trapped in a cage. They need to be able to flow. So that's the code broken down. But what does all this actually look like in the real world? Let's talk about how these traits show up day to day. This is their empathy in a nutshell. An ISFP doesn't need a long explanation for why you're sad. They just feel it. They get that sometimes the best support you can offer isn't a bunch of advice, it's just sitting with someone in the quiet and sharing that feeling with them. And this one shows how much they really, really hate conflict. To an ISFP, a fight isn't just a simple disagreement. It's like this harsh, chaotic energy that completely messes with their inner peace. So when they leave, it's not because they're scared. It's a deep-seated need to protect their own harmony. Think about a story like Mira's. Everyone around her was pushing her to get a practical, serious job. But she listened to her heart and went into design. And you know what? While her friends were stressed out and burning out in those high-pressure jobs, Mira found genuine happiness and fulfillment. That right there is the ISFP path to success. Always choose what's authentic to you, not what everyone else is doing. Now, because they're so gentle and quiet, ISFPs get misunderstood a lot. So let's just bust some of the biggest myths about them right now. Okay, first myth, people see that they don't like rigid work and think they're lazy. But that totally misses the point. Sure, an ISFP might drag their feet on some boring, meaningless task, but give them something they actually care about, something they're passionate about. You will see a fire and a level of dedication that is just incredible. And this is probably the biggest one of all, that they're weak because they avoid conflict. The reality
It takes a huge amount of emotional strength to choose kindness and peace in a world that so often rewards being the loudest and most aggressive person in the room. Their strength isn't loud, but man, is it deep. Of course, nobody's perfect, right? Every strength has a potential downside. That incredible sensitivity, sometimes it can mean they avoid a conversation that really needs to happen. Their love for living in the moment can make long-term planning, well, a little tricky. And that desire for everyone to get along can make it really hard for them to say no and set boundaries. So, what's the path forward for an ISFP who wants to grow? It really all comes down to one word: balance. It's about learning to mix a little discipline with all that freedom. It's about using their heart, but also listening to logic. And it's about realizing that true, lasting peace sometimes means you have to step up and take on some responsibility. And that really brings us to the most important point of all. If you're an ISFP listening to this, I want you to hear this loud and clear. Those things you were maybe taught to believe were your weaknesses, they are, without a doubt, your greatest assets. I'm talking about your incredible creativity, that deep, deep well of empathy you have, that unique way you see beauty everywhere, and your ability to just be in the present moment. Look, these are not just little quirks. These are your superpowers. So I'll leave you with this thought. You feel things that other people don't. You see the beauty that others just walk past. The world really needs that. So the only question is, how are you going to use that gentle power of yours?
एक कदम विकसित भारत की ओर।